Imagine a world where your day is so smooth because all the workforce is doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're following the rules. They make no mistakes. There's no fires to put out. You have a workforce that is just going along. Just sit for a moment and imagine how peaceful that would be. Well, unfortunately, a lot of times people do make mistakes. We have incidents, we do investigations, and then we have to take the evidence and we take it through root cause analysis. We put together corrective actions. Well, today I want to talk to you about how do we skip that? How do we look at our systems proactively so we can build these systems up to prevent mistakes from happening in the first place? So we're just going to spend a little time talking about the back of the Taproot root cause tree, because in the back of the tree we have different categories that's going to really help us hone in on where to look at our systems. How do we proactively improve those systems to make it more likely our employees are going to perform well and not make those mistakes that cause incidents? So the first thing we're going to talk about is our procedures. There's some jobs that are so important, we don't want to rely on people's memory. We don't want to rely on their training to get it right. So we give them written instructions, something they can have in front of them. They do a piece of the job, they check it off. They do the next step of the job, they check it off. There's no way they can mess up, right? So they can. It depends on how well written your procedures are. So there's some things you should think about as you put in these systems that deal with procedures. And one, you want to make them very convenient to use. So make sure you're putting these procedures where the work's being done, and we want to make sure they're right. So spend some time with the subject matter experts, the people that are doing the job. Look over these procedures and make sure that they're factually correct. And I don't know if it's like this in your company, but I have seen in the past where the procedures are in different formats. So if I'm going from one procedure to another, I'm trying to filter, how does this one read? How does this one read? So just spend some time standardizing that format and make sure that everything's accurate. The details are accurate. So when people try to follow them, they don't have to spend so much time and energy, because that's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent them from being distracted. We're trying to keep them working down that list. We want to prevent them from making a mistake. So those are some of the best practices with procedures. Just make sure that they're convenient to use, they're available where they need to be, that they're factually right. Make sure that they're easy to follow. Now, the next thing we talk about is training. Right? There's going to be some jobs where we're going to train people to do, and it's perfectly fine to trust their training to go out and do it. But if the job's pretty important, there's going to be some things that you want to ensure that you have strong systems for. One, if it's pretty tough, you want to make sure you analyze those tasks, right? Make sure you know exactly what you have to train on. So develop a lesson plan, develop learning objectives, and be very intentional on how you're going to give this training. There's going to be times that you could do classroom training. Maybe it's time you do training in the field. But what's going to be best for those employees? Get the right people around the table and talk about what does this really look like so we can get people in the best shape possible to make sure they don't make mistakes when they're doing this work. So maybe that includes testing afterwards to make sure they're proficient. And if they don't do the job very often, maybe we need some systems in place where we're going over, giving refreshment training, just that continuing education to ensure that they keep the skills that we're giving them. So those are some of the things to think about in training. Now, we also want to make sure our teams are communicating effectively. I'm sure you can think of some problems out there where there's some miscommunication, somebody thinks they're supposed to do something, they do it wrong, or they didn't know they were supposed to do something. So there's some systems you want to build up in your communications. One, you want to make sure they have the right equipment. Right? So if they're talking over long distances, if they're using walkie-talkies, is there static? Does it break up? Is it leaving room for miscommunication? So we want to make sure those devices that we're giving people are working well. The other thing we want to make sure is that no work is lost during the turnover process. So having a standard turnover process and a process to ensure that turnover is happening when it's supposed to happen. So how do we monitor it? How do we make sure people are doing it correctly? And the other thing we want to prevent is having people misunderstand the message.
Oh, east? I thought you said west.
Now, when we teach in our Taproot training, the person who's giving the message is responsible for making sure that message is understood. So there's going to be some systems that you can put in place, some best practices to ensure that's true. The one that I can think of off the top of my head is repeat backs, right? So if I'm telling somebody and I want to make sure that they understood the message I was giving them, I would just have them to repeat it back to me, and then I can say, yep, that's correct. And then I'll be sure that that message was carried through. Now, I'm going to save management systems for last, because management systems, that's really where all the rules we put in place to help people do a good job. I'm going to skip over to human engineering, because the way we engineer jobs for people is very, very important. Now, we want to engineer these jobs to make it less likely for them not to make mistakes. So if they're working with equipment, if they're working with machines, we want to make sure those machines are properly labeled. We want to make sure the controls are easy to use. If there's displays, any information coming to the person in those displays, it's easy to understand. They're getting the right information. They know what to do with it. So there's a lot of things you can look at between the relationship with people and the machines that they work with, so we can ensure that it's easy to use and there's less room for mistakes. The other thing that could cause issues is the work environment. We want to make sure that people are working in an environment that's conducive to doing the job right. We need to look at, is it well lit? Is it noisy? Do they need PPE, hearing protection? Are they able to do the job with the noise? Is it clean enough, right? Is there too much clutter around for them to be effective with their job? Are they working in cramped spaces? Do they have enough room? So I would go out, take a look at some of the jobs your people are doing, and make sure that work environment is conducive to not making mistakes. And the other thing I would add is, if you have people out there just figuring things out, like they're out in the field and they face adversity, and their job is to say, well, because of this and this, maybe we do this, or we'll try this. We don't want people figuring it out in the field, because that's where all the mistakes could come from. Yeah, they have a chance to get it right, but they also have a chance to get it wrong. So we want to recognize those situations that we put our people in. And if they're out there just doing the best they can, it's not good enough if you want to prevent the mistakes. So that's where training comes in again. Find those situations, train people for it appropriately. So dealing with those situations becomes a skill, something they don't have to think about very hard. They know exactly what to do in that moment, and that's going to prevent a lot of mistakes. Now, we also want to talk about work direction. There's a lot of systems we can put in place for work direction, and that's basically how we supervise our people. So when we put a supervisor in the field with our people, one of their job is to make sure that they prepare well. So let's take a look. What do our work packages look like? If we're not doing this job very often, are we doing walkthroughs to make sure the employees know exactly what they're supposed to be doing? Are we even preparing well? So the supervisors are getting the team ready to get the job. There's certain things that they should be doing in order to make sure everybody's prepared. And when they start the work, the supervisor is going to choose who's going to do it. Are they qualified to do it? Do we have the right experience on the team? Maybe we have some new people. We better have some experienced people on that team too, and a good mix so everybody works well together. And then we also want to make sure that people are ready to do the job, that they're not fatigued, that we can ensure that there's no substance abuse going on. And then the supervisor is going to be there. Should they be right there? When their team's doing the work and they run into trouble, we put supervisors in place to answer questions and to help people not make mistakes. So do we have the right level of supervision for whatever job that we're doing? And now we're going to finish with management systems. And remember, these are systems. It's not people. We're not talking about managers. We're not talking about executives. We're talking about the systems we put in place, the rules we put in place to make sure people are doing the job the right way, so they stay safe, keep the product strong, keep the business strong. So one of the ways we do that is we put policies in place, we put procedures in place, we put administrative controls in place. Again, these are the rules that everybody follows to make sure things run smooth. Well, if it doesn't, one of the things we should look at is how strong are these policies and procedures? Let's have a group take a look at them and make sure that they're strict enough, that there's no leeway, make sure that they're not confusing, that they're not incomplete. People doing the job, maybe they're part of that team that looks at them and says, yes, these are strong enough to make sure that we do it the right way. And then the way management normally knows that things aren't being followed is through auditing. So do we have a strong audit system in place? As a management team, are we looking at that through audits? And if we are we catching any non-compliance? So I would make sure you have a strong audit in place, make sure it's deep enough to recognize when people don't follow policies and procedures, and let people know that you are auditing, that you're checking, because that helps them make good decisions in the field. If they know that they're going to get caught because of audits, they're likely going to do the right thing. Now, if we do find out that people aren't doing the right thing, if they're disregarding policy and procedures, I've been part of a lot of investigations. It's usually because they faced some adversity in the field and they had to take a shortcut to get the job done to stay on schedule. And they're not bad people, they're not dumb people, they're just trying to get the job done. So when we find out somebody is not following policy and procedures in our audits, or we have a reactive investigation, we want to be able to address that by improving systems so the next person does follow. First, we're going to look at, have we communicated it well, right? How do we communicate it? I'm going to look at our communication systems and ensure, do we have a system in place where everybody hears or sees or understands the policies that we're giving them? I'm also going to make sure when we change policies or update policies, there's a strong system in place to make sure everybody understands what that change is. And probably the biggest, most important thing you can do in your systems is ensure there's a good enforcement system. Every person in the world is motivated to save time and to save energy, right? We're all looking to have more time at home with our kids. We're all looking, every part of our life, we're looking to save time and energy. It's the same thing in the field. So if your employees see somebody take a shortcut and it saves them time, it saves them effort, and there's no consequences, what do you think that employee is going to do? They're going to do the same thing. They're going to take the shortcut. And that's how that normalization of deviation happens. And if, as a management team, we don't have a system in place to recognize when people start taking shortcuts, we can't correct it. And usually we're going to find out this happens when we do an investigation. And we're like, oh man, it's not just this guy taking a shortcut, it's all these guys. So we want to be proactive and have good systems of enforcement. Make sure everybody understands how we're going to monitor the compliance to these policy and procedures and the consequences of when they're found to be non-compliant. Now, that's probably the best way to change things fast, is just to tell people, hey, we're watching, we're going to catch you, and when we catch you doing it wrong, we're going to punish you. It's a quick way, but that's not the best thing for your culture. So you also want to proactively look, what are we doing to reward people for doing the right thing, right? And that doesn't take a lot of time, it doesn't take a lot of money. One of the things that I heard in our training course that stuck with me for years is we had a guy say, I know what you're talking about with the enforcement needs improvement. I had a boss, every week he would sit down, maybe for about 15 minutes, think back over the week and think, okay, who's done a really good job? Who's went above and beyond this week? And he would write a thank you note. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, everybody does that. That's great. But he told me it wasn't to me. He wrote a thank you note to my wife and my kids. I didn't know this was happening. So I got home from work one day, and if you're like me and you have kids and you remember your refrigerator's got all kinds of stuff all over it, right? All your kids' drawings and colorings and stuff from school. Well, they had taken a window out of all that stuff and cleared it out, and there's that thank you note pinned to the window. And the thank you note wasn't written to the guy, it was written to the family. And he said, hey, I just wanted to let you know your dad is a superhero here. Your dad, we couldn't live without him. And he saw his kids just stand there so proud as he's reading this note, and it really got to him. And he said, I will be loyal to that guy for the rest of my life because he took the time to recognize somebody doing a good job. So as you're looking at your systems, to make sure people follow policies and procedures, make sure they know you're watching, make sure they know why, how important it is, and make sure they know the consequences for both the bad and the good for the decisions that they make for either following it or not. So if you have strong systems of enforcement, people are more likely to make the right decision. And it's also a good idea to have a good system in place to ensure everybody understands what they're accountable to, right? That they know exactly what they're supposed to do in their job so they can do it right. So those are just some ideas that you guys can use to look at your systems proactively, strengthen them, make sure you help prevent mistakes, and get to that place where things are going really smooth because everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Now that was just tip of the iceberg. So if you want to learn more about the Taproot methodology and the RCA tools and what we cover in training, check the description box below. You're going to see upcoming public courses, and there is a place where you can request a demo and briefing from one of our instructors to help you understand exactly what we're going to cover in training.